Say it right.
You are watching Talking Hardcore with George and Scott.
All right, we have a new intro.
This is Talking Hardcore, the podcast for people who love hardcore history.
We can skip the boring to the interesting stuff. Worst person in the world in history. Genghis Khan.
Do you want to do the intro?
Yeah, you're listening to Talking Hardcore with Scott,
And George.
and we're going to talk about what?
I winked at the camera like an idiot.
You.
So then I laughed at myself.
Okay.
Because then I'm like, man, that's going to look so dumb. So I just went, like, really bad.
Okay, so we're talking
Because it throws me all off when you do the intro.
Why?
But it's just,
What does
I
it
like
matter?
it. I like it. I'm not complaining. It just throws me all off. So it's good.
Well,
It's good to change it up.
Here's
I am
George
not
being a
complaining.
weirdo.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay. Today we're talking about Bubonic Nukes. Hardcore History episode 13. In that episode, Dan goes through basically the terrible, awful stuff that happens during the plague, the different breakouts of the Black Death in Europe and all over the world in the 1400s or in the 1300s and the 1400s. What it did to society, what it did to the church, how it fundamentally changed the whole way everything worked.
The fabric of society
Thank
is
you.
what I would say.
That's a good
Yeah.
way to describe it. It completely altered the fabric of society. And because it was so deadly.
Yep. I like I said, I think it was London went from 6 million people to 2 million people.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean 4 million people died.
That means 4 million people
No,
died.
it doesn't. It means 4 million people no longer lived in London.
Well,
So a large percentage of those people died. The rest of them probably got the hell out of the city.
some people did. He even
I think
mentions
you
the
mean
rich
England, though. I don't think you mean London.
people. No, he said London. I'm pretty sure he said London.
He might have. I'd be surprised if London had that many people all the way back then.
I
I don't even think there was hardly any cities that would have been over 1 million back
no,
then.
maybe it was 6
So,
million. Maybe it was 6 million.
I'm sorry. I'm, in the 1300s, maybe it was. You're right. I'm thinking longer ago. That was stupid. Okay, so either way, whole villages went away, whole families were wiped out regularly. Um, they identified areas where literally it went back to being forests.
And it even caused a mini ice age.
Well, they believe enough humans died that
Nature.
it affected the climate.
Well, it said, well, the belief is that nature started the explosive growth in
Right.
pollen giving plants is what really cooled down the atmosphere because there was so much pollen in the air
Hmm.
that it actually cooled down the planet. I think that's what if I remember correctly, that's exactly what was
I'm
said.
100% sure you're not remembering that correctly.
No, I'm telling you, like, because it was an excess of pollen.
It wasn't pollen.
It was pollen.
He didn't say anything like that.
I swear to God, he said pollen.
No way.
Maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're
I
definitely.
guess I'm wrong.
That's okay.
But
They do believe it was enough to affect the climate locally.
Sure.
Okay? Locally. And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
Who the
What
hell
I believe
knows?
about climate is that it's way more complicated than anybody likes to admit.
Uh,
That's what I believe.
I think it's way more complicated than anybody can figure out.
I agree.
Because they can't even, the weatherman, even with the radar and the satellites we have today, they can't even tell you when it's supposed to rain.
They're a lot better than they used to be.
They're still pretty bad.
Right. And that's weather, not climate. Weather's way easier.
It's
Weather's
way
way
easier,
easier.
and they still get it wrong 80% of the time.
Oh, not 80%.
Okay, fine. 60% of the time
Yeah.
they're wrong.
But anyway, let's go back to bubonic nukes.
Yeah.
So I remember when COVID hit and we started looking at what the symptoms were and all of those things. And I remember just thinking how lucky we were that it was not the plague.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. And
Well,
yet
it seemed like the plague when it was in Italy.
it didn't. It seemed like people were panicking.
No.
Right. That didn't make sense to me from the jump. But the problem is when you haven't had a plague, COVID can seem like the plague.
People thought it was the plague.
No, because they had no sense of perspective.
But that doesn't matter. People blew it out of proportion.
Yes,
then it wasn't.
that's my point.
It wasn't the Black Death. Okay,
Right, and
but
that's my point.
you could say, okay,
Compare the lethalness of COVID to the lethalness of the plague, or to the
it's
plague.
not even.
It's a joke.
Yeah, it's not even the same. Not even they're not even in the same
You're
category.
killing 50% of the people who get it.
Why don't you look at just the Spanish flu? The Spanish flu compared to COVID,
So much worse.
so much worse. Yeah.
So much worse than COVID.
But and then you know what? You didn't see. I mean, you did see some people. I mean, there are accounts during the Spanish flu in like New York where people would shut themselves in when they got sick. But a lot of people. I mean,
There were towns that tried doing things, and there were towns that didn't. And a lot of the data afterwards was, yeah, that didn't work.
no, because it was an airborne. It was a
Respiratory,
respiratory virus.
right? And so shutdowns don't work. Masks don't work. Those things don't work against a respiratory virus, and they knew that after the Spanish flu. The scientists wrote articles all about it. The people at the beginning of COVID, the Fauci's and all that, said, yeah, that stuff's not going to work. And then they were like, hey, well, if we don't do that, what do we do?
We
So
had
they're
to
like,
do
oh, yeah,
something.
we have to do something, so that's
Yeah.
going to work. But the reason it felt like we had to do something is because there was no sense of perspective.
Well, and the other problem is when the experts don't have a clue or don't have any any input to throw into the matter, then then who do you listen to? Well, then there's no point in listening to the experts because they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. And as the scientific method has continued, it shows further and further that they didn't know what they were just throwing shit against the wall and seeing what stuck.
Which is fine as long as you're telling people that.
Yeah, but they didn't do that. They didn't
Right.
say this is the best, we think X, Y, and Z, and this is the best action going forward.
Yeah.
They just said, no, you should do this. End of story.
And so if we're getting into modern current events politics and you guys have opinions that disagree with us, that's fine. I like to hear it. So go to the Discord and let's have a discussion. Let's have a civilized discussion about what you think we have wrong or what you think we have right, and we can go back and forth and actually maybe all come to a better consensus or learn something from each other, because we have to be able to hear ideas that we don't agree with.
Sure, 100%.
We have to.
Without getting to the point where you're name calling because you're upset.
Right. We have to be able to have discussions that where with people who disagree with us. So if you disagree about us, COVID with us, please let's have a discussion. Otherwise, these are our thoughts. And the reason this is coming up now is because we're on episode 13 of Hardcore Histories. And Bubonic Nukes really, to me, just highlights how absurd our reaction to COVID was.
Well, actually, if you remember the end of Bubonic Nukes, he actually says, what happens when somebody's in a lab and then oops, and then you hear like the beaker breaking or whatever.
Yeah.
And there you go. I mean, that is almost.
Yeah. He wrote a whole book in 2019 called The End Is Always Near.
Yep.
Talking about this possibility
just before
year,
COVID
hits. But we're lucky that COVID wasn't more deadly. And
Yeah.
we don't think about that because they're like, you look at the numbers and how many people died. And yes, a lot of people died. And I do not make light of that. I know people who died from COVID. I do not make light of that. But that does not mean COVID was worth the lockdowns. They didn't save any lives.
No.
I think the evidence is that the lockdowns have done much more harm than good.
Drug abuse,
overdoses, loneliness. Think about all the senior citizens who died living in their nursing homes because they were lonely and didn't get to see their family. We know that kills old people. Isolation kills old people. We know it. And then we did that, right? So the number of people who died because of all of our reactions to COVID, I think is probably just as much or close as the people who died from COVID.
It's possible, but without the actual figures,
we'll never know.
We'll never know.
Well, how could they do that figure? How could they count all the all the extra deaths from overdoses and substance abuse?
Well, they did start counting them,
but they can't say how many are from COVID and how many aren't.
Well, and
they can't say how many senior citizens, how many people would have lived another year or two, but died because they didn't see their family and they
But
were
the
lonely.
numbers from COVID are also exaggerated in some cases as well.
Oh, for sure.
Like, when you're monetizing a
Mhm.
virus, and that's what the federal government did. I don't know if anybody knows this, or at least just to reconfirm this, is
Yeah.
that every COVID case, a hospital said somebody passed away from COVID. I think it was a $25,000.
I think it was 30.
It was a
I
30,000,
think it was
whatever. It's
30.
25 or $30,000.
Yeah.
The hospital received
Yeah.
for saying that person died from COVID. So there was a lot of
I know.
people that passed away.
And the
That
death certificates got marked COVID.
correct, and they
I've
had
heard,
like terminal cancer or something.
I personally know people where they were told, hey, they had to fight the death certificate designation.
I've heard the same thing.
And the problem is, I talked to my mother-in-law about this, and she says, well, I don't believe doctors would do that. Well, doctors are people.
and
They won't all do that, but the people running a hospital, you know what they probably think? They probably think how much good they could do for their patients with that 30 grand.
yeah, or themselves.
So, but probably honestly, the way they justify it to themselves is how much good could I do for my patients?
Or themselves.
Yeah, but I doubt they were pocketing it. It was in a hospital.
I
No, big hospitals like that. I'm not. I don't think it was a bunch of people getting rich. Scott just bumped the camera. Don't worry, I did it like twice the last episode. So big hospitals like that, they did it because they they thought, well, we have all these extra expenses from masks and extra shifts and all these other things. Even if I'm a little telling this little lie, the net positive is I can do a lot of good with that money, and not just can I do good with that money, it helps the people take COVID seriously, so maybe it saves lives.
yeah.
And the problem with that is you've warped all the numbers, you added to a sense of fear that was unnecessary, and then our data is all trash.
Yeah, I mean, and
It's trash.
but some people, George, some people are very anxious and skittish to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to go back to evolutionary traits, there's a
You
reason
know I
why,
was gonna go there.
because those people.
You're stealing my
Yeah,
argument.
I'm sorry, but those people are
We
that
have
way for a
talked too
reason.
much. This is the same thing.
They're that way for a reason.
Because there's variations in every species within the species, right?
Sure.
We need people who are overly paranoid and cautious because in times of great danger, those people are likely to survive.
And you also need people who are overly cavalier.
Yes, because in times of great danger, they get amazing things done.
Yeah, there you go.
Just like deer, right? There's deer who are really cautious and skittish and run at the first sign of trouble. And there's deer that walk around like there's nothing could touch them.
Yep.
I once shot at a deer like 4 times.
And you missed 4
Oh,
times?
my gun was malfunctioning, so then I got all flustered.
Yeah, I missed 4
No, no,
times.
no.
My gun was malfunctioning.
Then I got all flustered, and so then I rushed the shots and absolutely screwed it up. Missed 4 times, and it wasn't even a big deer. It was ridiculous.
And this deer just
And it's just like walking around as a 12 gauge shotgun repeatedly goes off.
This deer's like, yeah,
Like,
this guy
this
can't.
guy's not long for this world.
No.
The next hunter's not going to be this poor. It's
No.
just not going to happen.
It's more like
He's
this
gonna get
asshole
shot.
can't hit the broadside of
Yes.
the barn. I'm good.
No, I feel like that deer had really bad survival instincts and will probably die.
Or maybe really good survival instincts, because he did not die.
Yeah, that was a fluke of my bad hunting ability. That's all that was.
Oh my God, that's too funny.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the first shot jammed, and then I was like rushing. Oh, it was a mess.
And then you got 3 shots off after that, or 4?
3 more.
So the first one jammed, then you got 3 shots off, and the guy was like, whatever.
Yeah, he never ran away. Never.
Did you run out of ammo? Tell me you ran out of ammo.
No, he finally just walked off.
Then I ran out of ammo because I only brought 4 rounds with me.
Well, those rifled slugs are expensive.
No, that's true. That's true. What is it, $25 a box now?
I don't know. It's the box you gave me. I'm still using. So.
No shit. Oh, all right.
Anyway, the point is there's variation in the species, just like with humans. And there was a lot of panic with COVID because we hadn't had a real pandemic. And so people thought, oh, this is the real pandemic, when really what it was not that dangerous
Yeah.
when you compare it to the plague.
Well, and people are no longer desensitized to deaths from viruses or issue like look tuberculosis, polio. People since the advent of vaccines, people experience it less.
Not just
So we're
vaccines.
not desensitized to it; we're sensitized to it now. Not just
Yeah,
vaccines, but you
sensitive.
get
We're
what I'm saying.
sensitive to it.
Well, yeah, all right. So it's
When
so
you
now we're
when you live
extremely
these safe lives,
where none of that is common occurrence.
you are much more worried
Well, I wouldn't even
about
say you're not worried about it happening, but if it does happen,
you're
then
much
it's
more
a
likely to panic.
yeah, and it's a completely new sensation or a new thing because that you haven't experienced it
Right.
yet.
Right.
It's not common everyday,
Okay. So
occurrence.
what's your biggest takeaway from the Bubonic Nukes episode?
I think that you know, humans we are extremely adaptable and we are able to overcome adversity,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes that adversity shapes and molds us into ways that we had never thought we would get to before. Like when he was talking, when Dan Carlin was
Mm,
talking about, the marriage rate went down, the birth rate went down, and
right.
when people should have been coming together on things, they were afraid of each other, so they were separating. So that's
Right.
that's one thing that I think we need to learn to live with, and not maybe, yes, everybody's worried about their own mortality,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe that's something that I don't know, maybe we shouldn't take so seriously, or
Right.
uh, maybe be a little more cavalier with. I don't know.
Risk assessment is something we're bad at.
When it's not commonplace, yeah.
Right. It's
And it,
something we're bad at.
but then what do you do? Do you bug out and live off the grid, or what are you going to do? I
Well,
mean,
that's the thing, right?
but then
Risk assessment is something we've been pretty poor at, and
but I think
I wonder about how much of that is because of the increased role of women in running society.
well, women are more attuned to working at keeping on what they have.
Different evolutionary pressures.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. But I really think that we need to
We need to talk to Paula about this.
that would be a good one to talk to. Yeah, Paula would
Yeah.
probably enjoy this conversation.
No, I need to ask her about that because that is something that I've thought a lot about COVID.
Yeah,
You know, 200 years ago when there's less women in government and less women in charge, would our reaction have been different?
I think so. I think you'd have had a lot of people just saying screw it.
Yeah, you wonder.
Well, I mean, they you have that anyway. I mean, if you think about
Right,
200 years ago in the U.S., you had people leaving
right,
lives on the East Coast
right.
to go west, and they were
Mm-hmm.
encountering a ton of different dangers.
Yep.
Poisonous snakes, spiders,
Dude,
just
they got on a
harsh
boat.
weather. Yeah,
They
not even. No, I'm
got
not even
the
talking about
but
boats. I'm
go
talking
back
about
when
wagons
yeah, but
west, baby.
before that, the people who did
Yeah,
that
they got on a
first,
boat to go.
their dads got on a freaking boat.
Yeah, not knowing where the hell they were going and
And
showing up
imagine
with
what
nothing.
boats were like then.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they're showing up with nothing.
So the risk
Most of them.
is different, right? Our risk assessment is different, and there's evolutionary pressures that would increase. I mean, think about all the people with COVID. Who panicked the worst?
Women and the elder. Well, I'd
It
say
was women,
women and
because
people in their
even the elderly
50s.
was mostly women
I'd
that were
say
that
women
age.
and the people in their 50s and 50s and
I would
60s
say
because they were supposed to be the most susceptible.
I think it was 60s and
Yeah.
70s, but
Yeah, but
yeah.
that's one more thing I want to bring up since we brought that. One thing that the bubonic plague did, it didn't discriminate based on age.
Hmm.
It wasn't a virus. It
Oh,
wasn't.
I think it killed even more people in the young and old. Whereas
Yeah,
COVID didn't kill young people, which is why we're so lucky.
yeah.
Well, like look at the Spanish flu, it killed 25 to 40-year-olds,
Well, one
which is just terrible.
but one thing that Dan Carlin brought up is, you had 19-year-old senators, or you had younger and younger people taking roles of authority and power,
Hmm.
or prestigious positions like a doctor or
Without
lawyer,
having
without having the
gone through the
experience,
experience.
because
Yep.
the older people had died off because of the plague.
Right.
So it's very interesting. And that, if you look at the
Hmm.
COVID thing, if you look at COVID, we haven't had that. So you're not seeing younger and younger people starting to take over.
No, we're
Um,
still waiting for that turnover on the generations, and unfortunately, it looks like it won't be this presidential election.
no, no.
But
Had
one
to
of the
bring up
things
the
that
election.
there's one thing that you just said that I found interesting, or that I wanted to talk about from my takeaway from bubonic nukes. How much it changed society. You like you were just saying, right? Unqualified people took jobs in the church. Unqualified people took jobs in the governments, but mostly the church was running everything then.
Yep.
And that's when you started to see the priest, the Catholic Church get corrupted, because these institutions that had all this institutional knowledge, and the young people were brought along by the old people. Well, those old people were dead, and the young people, a lot of them were dead, so they didn't get to be as picky about who they took.
Yep.
So then you got priests in there that were taking bribes more often. You got a lot of things. Dan talks a lot about that in the episode. A lot of things that started with the plague is literally what led directly to Luther
Yep.
and the Reformation.
For sure.
So without the plague, would you have got the Reformation? Who knows?
Probably not.
Maybe.
I mean,
It might have taken longer because you had the printing press as a big
yep.
monkey in that wrench
But
too.
then also systems as they progress tend to break down and get more corrupt and less efficient
Sure.
as they get older.
Sure.
And
And
that's
the
why,
Catholic Church was pretty old even then.
yeah. Oh yeah. But it's not. I mean, you can look at the U.S. government and say the same thing. I mean, it's gotten
It's
less efficient.
yeah. I'm not, yeah, for sure. But okay, so that's my
Sorry,
biggest
I
take.
know we just jumped.
No, yeah, that's my biggest takeaway from the Bubonic Nukes episode, was how much it changed society. And then you think about it. Well, COVID was way less dangerous, but if you look at the things we're dealing with now that are literally fallout from COVID,
I think mental health definitely
inflation,
took a dive. Inflation.
telling people that their jobs were not essential.
Yep, that was another one.
Think about how dumb that is. If
Hey,
you use your job to make money to feed your family, it's essential.
well, here's a good one.
That's a fact.
A
If
lot of
you take anything away from this, it's that your job's essential. If you use that money that you make to feed yourself and other people,
not just that.
it's
Your job,
essential.
your job's essential because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be there.
Right.
There wouldn't be a need for that job in society, so it wouldn't be there for you to have. So, you can look at like my wife. She was a physician assistant for a neurologist at the time,
Hmm.
and neurology was all of a sudden non-essential, so they closed down the neurology lab. So
Yeah.
then you had a PA, a doctor who'd been a world-renowned doctor that had been doing neurology for 40 years,
Hmm.
and all of the rest of his staff not treating people with severe migraines or whatever issues they had.
And then what are those people dealing with now?
Exact,
Because they're not getting their care.
or they might be dead.
Yep.
That's the other. So it's interesting. They sent home
Hmm.
trained and qualified medical personnel because they deemed them
Yeah.
not essential.
The whole idea is the government doesn't decide what's essential and not essential.
Well,
They don't. That's not in the Constitution. It's not their job description.
true.
That's the way I look at it. That was the dumbest, and that we're going to be dealing with the fallout from that one thing alone for decades. Because you have a bunch of people who don't want to work.
Yep.
Well, and if you just told them what they did was not essential for 3 years, maybe that's why they don't want to work.
Well, isn't there? I forgot what report it was. Was it 14 million men, working age men?
I think it was 7 or 10 million, no,
I
10
thought.
million or
Okay,
something.
10 million.
Mike Rowe talks about this a lot too.
Okay, but 10 million working age men
19 to 49,
have decided
18 to 49.
not to rejoin the workforce and are just.
Well, this is something that's been getting worse and worse, though. That's not all from COVID, but the numbers
Well, that didn't help.
no, didn't. The numbers that he cites are, I think it was like 10 million men between 19 or 18 and 49 that just are not working, and they're not looking for work. They're just not working.
Do you know what they call those? I remember going through economics, they called them
Freeloaders.
discouraged workers,
That's a
and then
thing.
they no longer counted them in the workforce data.
That's how
So
they've bastardized the unemployment numbers.
so after 6 months,
Yep.
after 6 months, and you're not looking for work anymore. You have become a discouraged worker, and you're no longer counted in the data.
You're no longer counted as unemployed.
Correct.
And that's why you get Trump and Biden both talking about record low unemployments.
Yeah.
That's all BS. Those are all just bullshit numbers that don't mean anything. They bastardize them. Trump did it. Obama did it. Biden's doing it. It's not real.
Well, then
The unemployment numbers are much higher.
But
They're
then
much higher.
how do you get those people to start working?
They need to not have money.
Okay, so how do they not have money?
Shit gets bad.
But a lot of them still live with their parents, or something similar to where they're on welfare or whatever. So if they're living with their parents and their parents whatever,
that money's going to dry up
sooner or later.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's why we talk about with the fourth turning.
What if those
That's
people
what
just
we were
become
talking.
homeless instead?
Yep, but people who are homeless, 99% of them are because of mental illness and drug addiction.
Sure.
I mean, you could see guys like, okay, if you say homeless because they bought a van and are living in national parks around the country in their van because that's what they want to do with their life, I don't consider that homeless, right? They choose to not have a house,
Yeah.
but they're not homeless. And there's people doing that now, and good for them, right? If you can pull that off, great.
Yeah.
If that's what makes you happy. I watched this YouTube video. One second, I'll get back to this. But we're dealing with those effects. We're dealing with inflation.
Yep.
Putting all of that cash from the money to the businesses, the money to the people, putting all of that cash into circulation deflates the currency, and that was infinitely foreseeable, and that's Trump and Biden both. Both parties are guilty of this. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't blame one or the other. They all screwed up
Well, wait a
because
minute.
they were panicking because they told people to stay home. And if you're telling people to stay home, how are they going to have money? Well, we'll give you money. Well, that doesn't work.
Well, wait a minute. You can't blame and now I'm looking at this from a realistic point of view. Hindsight's 2020, right? But
Sure.
you can't blame Trump for giving money.
Yes, I can.
Hold on, because a lot of people would have been worse off, especially after the government decided to close down. That's the issue.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's the wrong. I'm just saying that's playing the hand you're dealt.
No,
he didn't close down the country. He
kind of did though.
How?
If you go look, he did a government shutdown. He did that in mid-March, and that was right around when the states started doing it.
But it was mostly on the state
But if you
level.
tell the states, if you say, hey, we're not giving anybody any money, that doesn't work. You're going to screw the whole economy up. Get everybody back to work.
Yeah.
And then then that state deals with the consequences.
Well, you have states that didn't, like Florida.
Yeah.
And they're doing great.
Yeah.
I mean, financially
But
speaking.
inflation's still hitting them.
Yeah, it is.
Because inflation is a tax on the middle class and lower class.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt the upper class, and that's who was making those decisions, and that's why they did not give a shit.
Sure, but anyway,
when you go to the grocery store and you see how much everything freaking costs.
Let me finish. So you can't blame. Okay, maybe you can put some blame on Trump. Okay,
Yes, you can.
But would you put the blame more on Trump for playing the hand he was dealt, or would you put it on Biden for continuing playing the same hand?
They're both at fault.
Well,
if Trump
already had the data.
If Trump didn't agree to this in the first place, it would have been harder for Biden to get it passed, to do the second stimulus or the third stimulus or whatever.
Sure.
It all starts from the faulty premise that young people shouldn't have been going to work.
Fair
that
enough.
was always stupid, and other countries like Sweden didn't do that, and they were better for it. When you tell young people who were never at risk from COVID to not go to work to protect old people, you can't do that.
But that wasn't the line.
Because they lied.
But I know, but that wasn't the line.
I know.
So it's
But they lied.
you have a never-ending circle of.
Hey, Trump's at fault for not firing Fauci in the first place.
I don't disagree with
There's
that.
as much blame in COVID on Trump, Operation Warp Speed, all that stuff. Trump is just as much at fault for COVID as Biden. Now, Biden did all these power grabs with mandates and crap that are super unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court found them that way. He did a lot of stuff with censoring speech. Biden did. Trump tried to do some of that, but the tech companies were like, we're not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
But then Biden got in office, like, yeah, we'll censor whoever you want. Both of these idiots were at fault. Everybody needs to get the blame that they deserve for this so that it does not happen again. And you already got people talking about new mask mandates when there is so much good data that masks don't work, and yet people won't believe that because they spent a year and a half wearing one.
Yep.
So they can't go back.
Well, sure you can.
And if you're humble and you are not married to your ideas, you can do that.
But and by the way, I got the vaccine, and the reason why I got the vaccine was so I didn't have to wear a mask anymore.
And then they changed that within a month.
Yeah, I don't even think it was a month.
Yeah.
The vaccine doesn't stop you from getting COVID. Well, then it's not a vaccine.
No.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, if it doesn't stop you from getting it or spreading it, then it's
No, Trump
technically.
still backs Operation Warp Speed when it's obviously been nothing but a disaster.
You can't. He can't. He has no choice.
He could.
He
be
could,
humble.
but he's not going
A
to.
true leader admits when there's been a mistake and pivots.
Sure, but he's not going to do that.
Because he's not a good leader.
Well,
he's just not.
I don't think any president.
Yeah. Because we haven't had a good freaking leader in a long time.
Sure. And I don't think any president would sit there and be like, you know what, I was wrong. I screwed up. Sorry, everybody.
I think Lincoln would have. I know Washington would have.
Sure.
And that's what we should be comparing these people
You think Jefferson would have?
Yeah.
Jackson.
No.
No, Jackson wouldn't have done that.
No, neither would FDR.
You don't think FDR would have?
A modern president, I can't think of one that would have.
How about Teddy?
Nah, probably not.
Yeah.
But Teddy...
Okay, wait a minute. God.
The point of
Eisenhower.
Yes.
I think Eisenhower would have.
Yeah.
Kennedy? Kennedy would have.
I think he would have.
I think he would have.
Yeah.
Nixon?
You know what? Maybe.
What about Reagan?
Probably not.
Bush Sr.?
No.
Bush Jr.?
No.
Clinton?
No.
Okay. So then the last
It's
president.
too partisan
Wait a
by
minute.
then.
Carter would have. Carter would have.
Yeah. But yeah.
Carter
I
would
think
have.
that's fair.
We'll go with the last.
Because everything's
Ford
too
probably
partisan.
would have too.
Everything's too partisan now.
Ford probably would.
Yeah. So when the other party is going to use it to kill you because you pivoted because you realized you were wrong, it makes you less likely to admit that you were wrong, and that's the problem.
Well, there's nothing. I mean, I think you're right about the leadership role. We don't have a leader that will say, you know what, I screwed up.
Listen to Jocko talk about leadership on Rogan.
Jocko would be a great president.
Listen to Jocko talk about
If anybody
leadership.
doesn't know who Jocko is an ex-Navy SEAL.
He was running the SEALs.
And he does a number of podcasts with Joe Rogan. And I think he has some other podcasts.
He's got a really good one where he talks about leadership.
I think, you know who I'd like to see on the ballot, to be honest with you?
Yeah.
No, not Trump. I'd like to see Dan Crenshaw and Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
I think Unity 2020 would have been a good campaign.
That would have been cool.
You know, they took that down.
On Twitter.
You can't even find it. No. You can't even find the website anymore.
Twitter banned it too. Well, I'm sure they stopped back in the paying for the website. It was a good idea. It just wasn't. The parties are too rich. But anyway, the problem is if we don't learn from these mistakes with COVID, then the next time there's a frickin' respiratory virus or any virus that comes along, people are going to do the same damn thing.
Well, yeah, they're trying to do it with the COVID virus coming out of Canada.
Yeah.
It's way worse than the original COVID strain, and it's coming out of Canada, and it's going to kill you all. And DC's back under mask mandates. Washington, D.C.'s under mask mandates.
I am never going to have COVID again.
What do you mean you're never going to have COVID again?
I will never have COVID again.
You think so?
I can prove it.
How can you prove it?
Because I will never take a COVID test.
Oh, so then you can't be positive if you don't take a test.
If you can't test positive for COVID, then how can they prove you had COVID? So
well, I'll never
have COVID again.
I'll never wear a mask again.
Never.
My wife got COVID. I think I got COVID before it was even a thing in 2020.
Everybody does.
No. 2000. No.
I know.
December
Hey,
2019.
hey,
I was
hey.
traveling back and forth to San Francisco all
Sure.
the time. I remember hearing a dude cough on the plane, like, and it was so
Who
bad.
coughs on a plane?
No. This guy
Must be
coughed
COVID.
like he was dying.
Yeah, he
And I was like,
coughed on an
holy shit.
airplane. Must be.
No. It was one of those coughs where right away I was like, everybody on this plane is sick.
That's funny.
I swear he was like, like he sounded like he was dying. I was like, yep, we are all sick.
Yeah.
It came from like the base of his lungs,
Ooh.
like the shit, like
Okay.
the dust he breathed when he was an infant was coming up.
Sure.
Like that's
Okay. So, all right, that's our thoughts on bubonic nukes and COVID. Sorry, again, listen, if you disagree with us, we would love to have a discussion with you about this instead of just being mad at us and never listening again, which, hey, that's your right.
so
Come
clearly,
talk to us about it. Tell us why you think we're wrong, and we can have a discussion, and maybe we'll learn something, and maybe you'll learn something.
you know what's
So you go
funny.
to the link in the description. There's a hardcore history Discord.
You know what's funny.
Talking hardcore.
Everybody's gonna think I voted for Trump
Mhm.
because I defended Trump ever so slightly,
Yeah.
and that's not even what happened.
But this is how we need to be able to talk about these things without getting upset at each other.
Constitutionalist Party, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see the Libertarian Party today came up with a statement that they are looking for lawyers to help them challenge or request to be appointed conservator for Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden because they're clearly uh, mentally compromised and shouldn't be in charge of their own affairs.
I'm good with that.
I thought it was great.
Well, have you heard Joe Biden
Dude,
talk?
yeah.
Or Mitch McConnell and his freezing?
Oh
Like
man,
they're
both those guys.
they're too old.
I watched that Biden press conference the other day, and I'm thinking, holy crap, man! If this was my grandpa, I'd be like, sit down, grandpa, here, have some coffee, just relax.
Yeah, here's some
I would
tea.
not be
Or
putting him in front
here's
of
some whiskey.
putting him in front of a teleprompter and having him try to read speeches.
Feinstein, Pelosi's running again.
Oh,
Like I listen,
Fetterman, dude.
listen.
Fetterman had a stroke
I know. You know what? You can't hold it against a guy for having a stroke.
during the election. He could have just stepped down.
He could have, but he wasn't going to.
Right.
So anyway,
Too much money.
everybody, I just you know what? I don't have a problem with the transition. The problem we have is the I guess what's left of the older baby boomers, and yeah, I'd say the older baby boomers just cannot give up. They just will not give up their
No
power.
generation does though.
They have to.
They die.
Well, they're not dying. Clearly,
They are. The problem is there's a lot of them.
and they're still in power. That's the
Yes.
problem.
Well,
I'm not saying
this is our chance. This election is our chance to say no. And unfortunately, it looks like we're not going to be able to do that.
no.
But this is our chance to say no. No more octogenarians. We don't want somebody who's going to be 86 or 82 by the end of their presidency being president.
Yeah.
Say
We don't
no.
want you around when the typewriter was invented. Sorry, it's not.
No,
You know.
none of these exactly. None of these people should be president. They're compromised.
No, we need either age limits or term limits or both. Or both.
Both.
I mean, competency wise, you have to
At
take
least a competency test.
Yeah, but then you can fake that too. So I mean, you can rig that too.
You
You
can
know,
take a bunch of Adderall and suck it
just
up.
pump them full of shit. Here's some coke. Go ahead and take this test. Ah.
Right.
Anyway,
You're right. Okay, so that's our thoughts on COVID. Again, go to the description
and bubonic nukes.
and bubonic nukes, which go listen. Please, if you think we're being cavalier about COVID, listen to the episode called Bubonic Nukes and listen to how awful the plague was.
And then compare it to
And
COVID.
what it did to their culture and their society. And then just have a clue that COVID wasn't that bad.
And none of those people went out and bought toilet paper.
Yeah, that's true.
There was not a toilet paper shortage.
If it's killing 50% of your village or your city, that justifies panic. That's
Yep.
it. But COVID sure didn't. Anyway,
if you have to, when you have to.
What's your favorite podcast
My favorite podcast
that you're currently listening to, or
you know what I've every once in a while I jump back. I still listen to the Hardcore History podcast. It depends what I'm doing. If I'm working on something or if I'm cutting the
nothing better
grass.
than listening to hardcore history while you're doing yard work?
Mine's more like projects. I like listening to
Yeah.
Hardcore History.
Projects are great. Like
No.
when I built that sauna.
Yeah,
I was listening to Wrath of Khans.
I
It
know.
was awesome
I was there
for some of it.
for some of it. Yeah.
Some of it.
But no, like, if I'm exercising though, like it's either music or like an audiobook,
Sure.
something
Yeah.
I don't have to focus on what I'm actually doing.
Right. Right. Okay.
What
Well,
about you?
I still really like The Way I Heard It with Mike Rowe.
Okay.
That's a fun podcast. The original, the way that started was 10-minute long episodes with stories where you didn't know who he was talking about till the end. So those were fun. Now he does interviews. Those are also good. I like the short stories probably a little better, but he still throws in one of those once in a while.
Mike
Uh,
Rowe's a baller.
yeah, he is a baller. I still like Rogan.
Joe Rogan's good. Yep.
Lex Freeman is good. I know you find him too dry. He's gotten better. If you haven't listened to it in a while,
when you talk like this,
but
it's very hard to
he's gotten
understand.
better.
Okay. All right.
So that's
So
one
he added
thing.
some tone and some,
A
he's
little bit more emotion.
okay.
He's gotten better. Andrew Huberman, when there's a topic that he has that I find interesting,
Two bears,
I
one
love it.
cave.
I love Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura, but I don't listen to their podcast that
I don't
much.
listen to that either.
But they are funny dudes that I've seen their stand up, and it's hilarious.
The funniest one, and there's a short on it, is where Bert Kreischer is drinking Kool-Aid
Oh yeah,
for breakfast,
no,
and Bert Kreischer is like, "What are you drinking?" He's
no.
like,
Tom Segura is
"Tom
laughing
Segura, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
hard he's crying
yeah, yeah." It's
because
that's
here's a grown man drinking a 32-ounce glass of Kool-Aid for
Kool-Aid for
breakfast.
breakfast.
It's pretty great. If you haven't seen any of Bert Kreischer's stand up, check out The Machine.
Oh, hilarious!
Just go to YouTube and type in Bert Kreischer or The Machine and watch this bit from his first special that he did about this story when he went to Russia in college.
Ya machina.
True story, hilarious. That guy is funny, man.
I am the machine. It's
Yeah,
just
it's great.
hilarious.
Watch that if you haven't seen it. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Thanks for
That's it.
watching.
Thank you.